The void of space stretched endlessly in every direction, a silent and unforgiving abyss. Stars shimmered like distant torches, but Captain Dorian Kane had little time to admire them. His ship, the Valkyrie, a battle-worn but reliable frigate, glided through the darkness. A distress signal blinked on his console, its red glow casting eerie shadows in the cockpit. The signal was weak, barely holding together, but the message was clear: Royal Auxiliary Transport under attack. Request immediate assistance. Kane exhaled sharply. The Auxiliary were an advanced alien race, known for their strict hierarchy and cold treatment of outsiders, especially humans. If their ship was in trouble, it meant someone powerful wanted them dead. "Damn it," he muttered, running a hand through his short black hair. Logic told him to ignore the signal. He wasn't a hero. He was a survivor, a mercenary who had learned long ago that getting involved in other people's wars only led to trouble. And yet, something in the broken transmission made him hesitate. A desperate voice, the plea. Against better judgment, Kane adjusted his course. As the Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace, the sight before him made his gut tighten. A sleek silver cruiser, unmistakably Auxiliary, drifted in space, its hull burning in places. Surrounding it were 3 enemy ships, their weapons trained on their wounded prey. They weren't here for a simple raid. They wanted to finish the job. Kane's instincts kicked in. He punched the ship's thrusters, bringing the Valkyrie into an attack run. His fingers danced over the controls as he armed his ship's pulse cannons. The enemy ships noticed him too late. Twin bursts of blue plasma streaked through space, slamming into the nearest attacker. The ship exploded in a brilliant fireball, sending debris flying. The second enemy vessel veered away, trying to escape, but Kane was faster. A well-placed missile hit its engines, sending it spinning out of control. The third ship, realizing it was outmatched, broke formation and jumped into hyperspace. Silence returned, but Kane knew it wouldn't last. The damage to the Auxiliary cruiser was severe, and there were likely survivors aboard. He opened a comm channel. "This is Captain Kane of the Valkyrie. Anyone alive over there?" A moment passed before a reply crackled through the static. A voice, soft yet commanding. Female. "Captain Kane, I am Princess Elith of the Auxiliary Empire. You have my gratitude." Kane raised an eyebrow. A princess. That explained the heavy attack. Someone really wanted her dead. "Glad to be of service, Your Highness," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "Your ship isn't going to last much longer. I suggest you come aboard." There was a brief hesitation. The Auxiliary were a proud people, and accepting help from a human must have been humiliating. But she had no choice. "We are coming aboard," she said at last. Kane moved quickly. He guided his ship alongside the cruiser, extending a docking bridge. Moments later, the airlock hissed open, and a small group of figures stepped through. At the center of them was Princess Elith. She was unlike anything Kane had ever seen. Tall and graceful, with luminescent silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her violet eyes, deep and piercing, locked onto him with a mix of caution and curiosity. Delicate facial markings ran across her high cheekbones, symbols of her royal bloodline. She was beautiful, but there was also an undeniable strength in her stance. Behind her, 2 Auxiliary guards stumbled in, wounded and barely standing. They looked at Kane with suspicion, but Elith held up a hand, stopping them from drawing their weapons. "You saved us," she said simply. Kane nodded. "Looked like you needed the help." She studied him for a moment before nodding. "Then I am in your debt." Kane sighed. "Yeah, well, don't thank me yet. That was a small hit squad. More might be coming." Elith's expression darkened. "They will come." That wasn't what Kane wanted to hear. He led them deeper into the Valkyrie, heading toward the medbay. As they walked, Elith spoke. "My transport was supposed to be on a secure route. Only those within the royal court knew of my journey. This was no random attack." Kane frowned. An inside job. She nodded. Yes, someone within my own family wants me dead. Kane let out a low whistle. Politics and assassinations, exactly the kind of trouble he didn't want. He had been planning to drop her off at the nearest safe station, but now it was clear she had nowhere to go. Let me guess, he said, glancing at her. You need my help. Elif met his gaze. You are a warrior, a fighter. You did not hesitate to face my enemies, despite having no reason to. That is rare. Kane folded his arms. That's not an answer. She took a slow breath. I need someone I can trust. Trust. That was a dangerous word. Kane had learned long ago that trust could get a man killed. But as he looked at the wounded princess, at the fire in her eyes despite the danger she faced, he felt something stir inside him. A mission, a purpose, and perhaps, just this once, he would take the risk. The hum of the Valkyrie's engines filled the air as the ship soared through hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the Scifi royal cruiser. Kane sat in the cockpit, watching the star-streaked void ahead, his mind racing. He had saved a Scifi princess. He had taken her aboard. And now, the most powerful empire in this part of the galaxy would soon be looking for him. Brilliant, Kane. Absolutely brilliant. Behind him, footsteps echoed in the small space. Princess Elif entered the cockpit, her silver skin reflecting the dim lights. She moved with an elegance that was both effortless and commanding. Kane didn't turn around. If you're here to say thank you again, don't bother. I already made my bad decision. Elif folded her arms. You speak as if helping others is a mistake. Kane glanced at her. Helping a stranded traveler? No, but rescuing a princess whose enemies want her dead. That's a whole different level of trouble. Elif didn't deny it. Instead, she stepped forward, her violet eyes scanning the control panel. Where are we headed? A neutral system. Outpost 46. Kane leaned back in his chair. It's a trading hub. Lots of people. No questions asked. You can disappear, and I can go back to my life. Elif's expression hardened. Disappear. That was the plan. A tense silence followed. Kane could feel her studying him, weighing her words carefully. I cannot simply vanish, she said at last. I am the heir to the Scifi throne. If my enemies succeed, they will take control of my people, and they will spread war across the stars. Kane sighed. Look, princess, I get it. Politics, betrayals, wars, none of that is my fight. Elif's gaze didn't waver, and yet you fought for me back there. Kane didn't respond immediately. He had fought because he hated seeing people gunned down without a chance. He had fought because something in that distress call had pulled at him. But that didn't mean he wanted to be part of a galactic power struggle. A beeping sound interrupted his thoughts. He turned to the console, eyes narrowing. Damn it, he muttered. Elif stepped closer. What is it? Kane tapped the screen. We've got company. A trio of Scifi warships had just emerged from hyperspace behind them. Your people work fast, Kane said, already flipping switches. They must have tracked the escape pod you came in. Elif's expression darkened. If they were truly my people, they wouldn't be chasing us. Those ships belong to the coup. Well, great. That makes me feel a lot better. Kane grabbed the controls. Hold on. The Valkyrie veered sharply, engines roaring as Kane threw the ship into a high-speed maneuver. Plasma fire streaked past, lighting up the dark void. Elif braced herself against the console. You cannot outrun them forever. I don't need forever, Kane growled, gripping the controls. Just long enough. He weaved through space, dodging blasts with razor-sharp reflexes, but the warships were gaining. Their sleek, advanced design outmatched the Valkyrie's aging engines. A warning alarm blared. Incoming missiles. Kane's hands flew across the console, deploying countermeasures. A cluster of flares shot out, confusing the missile's targeting systems. Two detonated harmlessly. The third, however, kept coming. "Brace!" Kane shouted. A split second later, the ship shook violently as the missile struck the rear shields. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. "Shields down to 20%. Eleth reported, her voice calm despite the situation. "Yeah, I noticed," Kane muttered. He gritted his teeth. There was only one option left. "Hang on," he warned. "We're going into the storm." Eleth's eyes widened. "The what?" Kane didn't answer. He pitched the ship downward, diving into the thick, swirling mass of a nearby ion storm. Lightning crackled through space, dancing across the purple clouds of charged plasma. No sane pilot would enter a storm like this, which was exactly why Kane chose it. The moment the Valkyrie plunged into the storm, the ship rattled violently. Electricity coursed across the hull, scrambling sensors and disrupting enemy lock-ons. Behind them, the Xilari warships hesitated. Their sleek designs made them powerful, but they were also delicate. The storm could easily fry their systems. Kane smirked as he watched them pull back. "That's right," he muttered. "Stay out there." Eleth exhaled. "Impressive." Kane shook his head. "It's not over yet." The storm wasn't just dangerous for their pursuers. It was dangerous for them too. The controls flickered, and the engine sputtered. "I need to land," Kane said. "Fast." Eleth pointed to the sensor screen. There, a moon inside the storm. Kane adjusted the controls, guiding the ship toward the dark silhouette. The storm made the descent rough, but he managed to bring the Valkyrie down onto the moon's rocky surface. Silence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ship sat still, battered but intact, hidden beneath the storm's raging clouds. Kane exhaled and leaned back. "Well, that was fun." Eleth gave him a look. "You humans have a strange idea of fun." Kane chuckled. "You should see us on weekends." Eleth glanced at the storm outside. "How long before we can leave?" Kane checked the readouts. "Repairs won't take long. The bigger problem is getting past those warships when we do." Eleth's gaze hardened. "Then we find another way." Kane studied her. Despite the chaos, the danger, she hadn't panicked once. She had the composure of a true leader. He let out a breath. Maybe, just maybe, he had made the right choice in saving her. But escaping was one thing. Surviving the war she was caught in, that was something else entirely. The storm raged outside, purple lightning crackling through the thick clouds, casting eerie shadows on the rocky surface of the moon. Inside the Valkyrie, Kane wiped sweat from his brow as he worked on the damaged power systems. The ship had taken a bad hit during the escape, and while it was still in one piece, they weren't going anywhere until the repairs were done. Princess Eleth stood near the cockpit, her violet eyes fixed on the storm outside. She had been silent for some time, deep in thought. Kane could tell she was calculating their next move. "You're quiet," Kane remarked as he tightened a bolt. "That means either you're planning something, or you regret trusting a human." Eleth turned to him. "I do not regret my choice, Captain Kane. You saved my life twice now. I trust you." Kane raised an eyebrow. "That's a dangerous thing to do." Eleth gave a small smile. "So I have been told." Kane set down his tools and leaned against the wall. "All right, Princess. We both know we can't sit here forever. Those warships are waiting for us to leave, and I doubt they'll let us go peacefully. You got a plan?" Eleth nodded. "Yes, we cannot run forever. I must return to Xilora Prime, the heart of my empire." Kane crossed his arms. "That's suicide. Your enemies control the throne. The moment you step foot there, they'll throw you in a cell, or worse." "I will not be alone," Eleth said firmly. "You will be with me." Kane chuckled. "I had a feeling you'd say that." Eleth walked forward, her gaze intense. "Listen to me, Captain. The Xilari Empire sees humans as a lesser race. But what you did, taking down 3 warships alone, outsmarting them, fighting against impossible odds that will not go unnoticed. My people value strength. If you stand beside me, they will have to listen. Cain exhaled. So you want me to be your bodyguard? Elif shook her head. No, I want you to be my champion. Cain frowned. Champion. In the royal court, words are not always enough. When power is challenged, a trial of combat can be demanded. A champion can fight in the name of a ruler. If I return and accuse my cousin of betrayal, he will call for a trial. If I do not have a warrior to fight for me, my claim will be dismissed. Cain smirked. Let me guess. You want me to be your warrior. You are the only one I trust. Cain ran a hand over his face. He had fought in many battles, taken down mercenaries, bounty hunters, and criminals, but standing in the middle of an alien empire and fighting for a princess, that was a whole new level of crazy. He glanced at Elif. She wasn't just desperate, she believed in him. All right, princess, he said with a sigh. Let's go get your throne back. Elif gave a small nod of gratitude. We must be careful. The moment we arrive, we will be watched. Cain smirked. Good. I like an audience. The journey to Xilura Prime. With the ship repaired, the Valkyrie lifted off the moon, soaring through the storm. As expected, the Xiluri warships were waiting. Cain stayed calm. Let them lock onto us. We're not running this time. Elif sat beside him, her voice steady. Open the communication channel. A holographic screen appeared, showing the Xiluri commander, a sharp-featured alien with cold blue eyes. He sneered at Cain before addressing Elif. Princess, surrender at once. You are not welcome here. Elif's voice was calm but firm. I am the rightful heir of the Xiluri Empire. By law, I have the right to challenge my accuser. Let me speak before the royal court. The commander hesitated. He could not deny her request without breaking the Empire's own laws. You are a fugitive, he hissed. Your words mean nothing. Elif's gaze did not waver. Then let the court decide. There was a long pause. Then the commander nodded. Very well, he said. But know this, you will not leave Xilura Prime alive. The screen flickered off. Cain exhaled. Charming guy. Elif's expression was unreadable. This is only the beginning. Cain tightened his grip on the controls. Then let's make it a good start. With that, the Valkyrie jumped into hyperspace, heading straight for Xilura Prime, the heart of the Empire, and the battlefield where everything would be decided. The streaks of hyperspace faded, revealing a breathtaking view of Xilura Prime, a massive planet covered in towering spires of crystal and metal, with glowing energy rivers running through its landscapes. It was the heart of the Xiluri Empire, home to billions, and now, the most dangerous place in the galaxy for Cain and Elif. Inside the Valkyrie, Cain adjusted the ship's course. His hands were steady, but his mind was alert. He had survived countless battles, but this was different. They weren't sneaking in or blasting their way through. They were walking straight into enemy territory. Elif sat beside him, her expression unreadable as she gazed at her homeworld. You ready for this? Cain asked. She took a deep breath. I was born for this. Cain smirked. Good answer. A transmission beeped on the console. The same Xiluri commander from before appeared on the screen. Human, he sneered. Prepare to be escorted. If you attempt any tricks, we will destroy your ship. Cain shrugged. Yeah. Lead the way, tough guy. 4 sleek Xiluri battlecruisers flanked the Valkyrie as it descended toward the planet. Cain had to admit, the Xiluri architecture was something else. Massive, glowing cities stretched across the surface, each structure carved with intricate patterns that shimmered in the sunlight. But beneath the beauty, danger lurked. The royal citadel, where the court awaited, was a fortress of black obsidian and golden light, built into a mountain that overlooked the capital. As Kane landed the ship in the designated docking bay, a squad of Silari guards in silver armor surrounded them instantly. Kane glanced at Eleth. Guess they're rolling out the welcome mat. Eleth stepped forward, her posture regal. We follow the law, Kane. Stay close. Wouldn't dream of leaving your side, Kane said. As they exited the ship, an imposing figure stepped forward. Prince Vareth, Eleth's cousin, the one who had stolen the throne. His silver skin was darker than Eleth's, his violet eyes colder. He wore elaborate royal robes, and a cruel smirk played on his lips. My dear cousin, Vareth said, his voice smooth but filled with mockery. I thought you were dead. A shame you are not. Eleth met his gaze without flinching. A ruler should not fear the return of their heir, unless they know they rule unjustly. Vareth's smirk twitched. Brave words for someone who no longer has power. Eleth lifted her chin. I invoke the trial of sovereignty. By our laws, I demand a challenge for the throne. A murmur rippled through the gathered nobles. Even the guards exchanged uncertain glances. Kane noticed the tension in the air. Eleth was using the Auxiliary's own traditions against Vareth, and he didn't like it. Vareth's eyes darkened. Very well, but you have no army, no allies, and most importantly, no warrior to fight for you. Eleth turned to Kane. I have my champion. Vareth's gaze snapped to Kane, and for the first time, his confidence faltered. A human. He laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. This is your champion, a lesser species, a scavenger from the lawless stars. Kane smirked. Yeah, that's me. The lesser species who outran your warships and saved your princess. You might want to update your opinion, pal. A ripple of unease spread through the court. The Exilari valued strength above all else, and Kane's actions had already made him a legend. Vareth's smirk returned, but there was steel in his voice now. Then so be it. You will fight in the arena of kings against my own champion. And when he kills you, my rule will be absolute. Kane glanced at Eleth. So, just a normal fight, huh? Eleth's voice was firm. Win, and you will not only save me, you will change the fate of my people. Kane rolled his shoulders. No pressure, then. The Arena of Kings. The next day, the Grand Arena of Kings was packed with thousands of Silari nobles and warriors. The massive Colosseum was made of black stone and shimmering energy fields, with banners of golden fire hanging from every pillar. Kane stood in the center, stretching his arms. He had fought in plenty of places before, dark alleys, space stations, pirate dens. But this was something else. A deep voice echoed through the arena. Enter, champion of the throne. The gates opposite Kane rumbled open. A massive Silari warrior stepped forward, towering over Kane. He was clad in ornate battle armor, his muscles rippling beneath his exosuit. In his hand was a blazing energy spear, its tip crackling with violet plasma. Kane let out a slow breath. Of course, he's huge. Vareth stood from his throne, his voice booming. This is Zarek the Unbroken, undefeated in over 100 battles. You die today, human. Kane grinned. You talk too much. Eleth, watching from the royal balcony, clasped her hands together. Be careful, Kane. The arena's energy field flared, signaling the start of the fight. Zarek charged, his spear slicing through the air. Kane dove to the side, barely dodging as the weapon struck the ground, sending a shockwave through the stone. The crowd roared. Kane rolled to his feet. All right, big guy. Let's dance. Zarek lunged again, but Kane was fast. He ducked, spinning around and delivering a sharp kick to the warrior's ribs. It was like kicking a metal wall. Zarek barely flinched. Kane exhaled. Yeah, that figures. Zarek swung his spear, aiming for Kane's head. At the last second, Kane dropped low, grabbing a fallen piece of stone and hurling it at Zarek's face. The warrior snarled, momentarily blinded. Cain seized his chance. He darted forward, landing 3 rapid punches to Zurich's gut. This time, the Xilari grunted in pain. The crowd gasped. Vareth's smirk faded. Eleth whispered, "You can do this, Cain." Zurich roared, his spear spinning with deadly speed. Cain braced himself. This fight was far from over. The arena pulsed with energy as thousands of Xilari spectators watched in anticipation. The battle between Cain and Zurich, the unbroken, had begun, and the fate of Princess Eleth rested on the outcome. Cain stood his ground, sweat dripping from his brow. Zurich, the massive Xilari warrior, twirled his energy spear, its glowing blade crackling with power. His violet eyes locked onto Cain with deadly focus. "You are fast, human," Zurich admitted, "but speed will not save you." Cain smirked, wiping the dust from his face. "Good thing I've got more than just speed." With a roar, Zurich lunged forward, thrusting his spear at Cain's chest. Cain barely dodged, rolling to the side as the weapon slammed into the ground, sending a shockwave of force through the arena floor. Dust and debris flew into the air. Cain didn't wait. He darted forward, aiming a punch at Zurich's ribs. But the Xilari was faster than he looked. He twisted, backhanding Cain with incredible strength. The impact sent Cain flying backward, his body crashing against the stone wall of the arena. Pain shot through his ribs. The crowd cheered for Zurich, their voices shaking the air. Eleth's hands clenched the balcony railing, her eyes filled with worry. "Get up, Cain," she whispered. Cain groaned, pushing himself to his feet. He tasted blood but grinned anyway. "That all you got?" he taunted. Zurich's expression darkened. "You should have stayed down." He charged again, his spear cutting through the air. Cain watched carefully this time. Zurich was strong, but his movements were predictable. The warrior relied on his size and power, expecting his opponents to crumble under his strength. Not this time. At the last moment, Cain sidestepped the attack, then spun around, grabbing Zurich's arm and using his own momentum against him. With a grunt, Cain flipped the giant warrior over his shoulder, slamming him into the ground. The entire arena gasped in shock. Vareth, watching from the royal seat, stood up in disbelief. Cain stepped back, breathing hard. "Bet you didn't see that coming." Zurich growled and jumped to his feet, but Cain saw the brief hesitation in his movements. The Xilari warrior had felt that. Now he knew Zurich wasn't invincible. Cain cracked his knuckles. Round 2. The strategy shift. This time, Cain didn't wait for Zurich to attack. He rushed forward. The Xilari swung his spear, but Cain ducked low, dodging the deadly energy blade by inches. He rolled under Zurich's legs, then delivered a brutal kick to the back of the warrior's knee. Zurich staggered. Cain didn't stop. He jumped onto the Xilari's back, wrapping his arm around his throat in a powerful chokehold. Zurich roared, thrashing wildly, trying to throw Cain off. The crowd shouted in disbelief. No one had ever seen a human overpower a Xilari warrior like this. Vareth's hands clenched into fists. Zurich stumbled, his strength fading. His attacks became weaker as Cain's grip cut off his air supply. With one final struggle, Zurich fell to his knees. Cain released him and stepped back, watching as the mighty warrior collapsed face first into the ground, unconscious. Silence fell over the arena. Then, cheers erupted, not just from Eleth's supporters, but from many others in the audience. Cain had done something no one had expected. A human had defeated a Xilari champion. The aftermath. Cain stood over Zurich's unconscious form, breathing hard. His arms ached, his ribs throbbed, but he had won. He looked up at Eleth. She was smiling, pride and relief in her eyes. Vareth's face twisted in fury, but he could not deny the result. "The trial of sovereignty has been fulfilled," one of the elder Xilari judges announced. "By our laws, Princess Eleth's claim to the throne is valid." The crowd cheered louder, some chanting Eleth's name. Vareth's jaw clenched. He took a step forward. This is a mistake. Eleth raised her hand, silencing him. The people have seen the truth today. Strength is not just about power, it is about will. And today my champion has proven that humanity is not weak. Cain smirked. Glad I could help. Vareth's eyes burned with hatred, but he knew he had lost. He turned sharply and stormed out of the arena. Cain exhaled, looking at Eleth. So, what now, princess? Eleth smiled. Now we take back the throne. The air inside the royal citadel was tense. The grand halls, once a symbol of power and stability, now felt like a battlefield waiting to erupt. Cain walked beside Princess Eleth, his muscles still aching from the fight against Zurich. The victory had won them the people's support, but Cain knew the real battle was still ahead. Vareth was not the kind of man to accept defeat quietly. Eleth led Cain through the golden corridors of the palace, where towering statues of past rulers lined the path. Guards and noble auxiliary whispered as they passed. Some looked at Cain with awe, others with doubt. A human walking these halls as a champion. Unthinkable. Cain smirked to himself. I don't think they like me much. Eleth glanced at him with amusement. They don't know what to make of you. No human has ever stood in the heart of our empire as an equal. Cain chuckled. Guess I like breaking records. But beneath his humor, he stayed alert. The corridors felt too quiet, too easy. As they approached the Grand Council chamber, a voice echoed from ahead. Going somewhere, cousin. Cain and Eleth stopped. Vareth stood at the entrance, flanked by a dozen elite guards in black armor. His violet eyes gleamed with anger, but his smirk was confident. You think a single battle earned you the throne? Vareth sneered. You truly understand nothing about ruling. Eleth's gaze was steady. The people saw what happened in the arena. They know who is fit to lead. Vareth chuckled darkly. The people are fools. And you? He turned his glare to Cain. You are nothing but an outsider who got lucky. Cain sighed. You know, for a guy who lost, you talk a lot. Vareth's smirk vanished. He raised his hand. The guards drew their weapons. Cain's instincts screamed. He grabbed Eleth's arm and pulled her behind him as the first plasma blast shot through the air. The fight had begun. Battle in the citadel. Cain rolled behind a pillar, dodging another energy shot. Eleth drew a small energy dagger, her expression fierce. Looks like he didn't want to wait for a fair fight, Cain muttered. Won through treachery. He has violated the sacred laws of succession, defied the trial of sovereignty, and now seeks to silence me. Murmurs spread among the council. Eleth pointed at Cain. This human, Cain, fought in the sacred trial and won. The people saw it. They witnessed my right to rule. One of the counselors frowned. A human, fighting for the throne of the Xilari. Unheard of. Cain sighed. Yeah, well, I tend to do impossible things. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Vareth stormed in, flanked by armed guards. His eyes burned with fury. Enough of this, he bellowed. Counselors, do not be deceived by this nonsense. A human has no place in our affairs, and Eleth is too weak to rule. Valor raised a hand, silencing the room. His gaze shifted between Eleth and Vareth. We have heard both sides. We will judge fairly. But Vareth was done with words. He turned to his guards and snapped his fingers. The guards raised their weapons. The counselors gasped as the soldiers aimed at Eleth and Cain. Vareth's voice was cold. I no longer need your approval. I will take the throne by force. A tense silence fell. Then Cain moved. The last battle. Cain grabbed Eleth's wrist and pulled her down just as the first energy shots flew across the chamber. Bolts of plasma exploded against the walls, sending shards of metal flying. The counselors scrambled for cover. Cain rolled behind a marble pillar, firing a blaster he had grabbed from a fallen guard. I knew he wouldn't play fair. Eleth gritted her teeth. We need to stop him before he takes full control. Cain nodded. Then let's end this. Vareth stepped toward the throne, his guards protecting him. This empire is mine, he shouted. Cain narrowed his eyes. Not today. He sprinted forward, dodging plasma blasts. One guard blocked his path, swinging an energy staff. Cain ducked under the attack and punched the warrior hard in the stomach, knocking him aside. Another soldier charged, but Eleth was faster. She leaped, twisting through the air, and landed a precise kick to the soldier's head, sending him crashing to the ground. Cain smirked. Nice move. Eleth grinned. I learned from the best. Vareth growled in frustration. He activated his energy blade, its blue glow humming dangerously. Enough games, he roared. He lunged at Cain, swinging the blade with deadly precision. Cain blocked with a stolen staff, but the impact sent him sliding back. The strength behind Vareth's attack was enormous. You think you can challenge me, human? Vareth sneered. He struck again. Cain dodged left, barely avoiding the blade, then countered with a powerful elbow to Vareth's ribs. The Exilari staggered but recovered quickly. You're good, Cain admitted, but I've fought worse. Vareth's eyes darkened, then died like the rest of them. He swung his blade in a wide arc. Cain barely managed to parry, but the impact knocked the staff from his hands. Vareth smirked. It's over. Cain exhaled. Not yet. Just as Vareth moved in for the final strike, Eleth attacked from behind. She threw her energy dagger, and it slashed across Vareth's hand, forcing him to drop his weapon. He cried out in pain, clutching his wounded hand. Cain didn't waste the opportunity. He stepped forward and punched Vareth square in the face. The Exilari collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The battle was over. The new era. Silence fell over the chamber. The counselors emerged from their cover, their eyes wide in shock. Vaylor stepped forward. It is clear, he said, his voice firm. Princess Eleth has proven her right to rule. And this human, he looked at Cain, has done what no outsider ever has. Eleth knelt before the council. I swear to rule with wisdom and honor, to protect my people, and to bring peace to the empire. The counselors nodded in agreement. Vaylor turned to the guards. Take Vareth away. His crimes will be judged. As the soldiers carried Vareth's unconscious form away, Eleth turned to Cain. You saved me, she said softly. You saved my people. Cain scratched the back of his head. Well, I wasn't gonna let that guy win. She smiled. You don't have to leave, you know. You could stay. Rule beside me. Be more than a warrior. Be part of something greater. Cain hesitated. He had spent his whole life moving from one fight to another, never staying in one place. But looking at Eleth, at the hope in her eyes, he felt something different. For the first time, he had a home. He smirked. Well, I guess I could give it a shot. Eleth smiled. Then stay. The crowd cheered as Eleth stepped toward the throne. The rightful ruler had risen, and beside her stood the human who changed the fate of a galaxy. He smirked. Well, I guess I could give it a shot. Eleth smiled. Then stay. The crowd cheered as Eleth stepped toward the throne. The rightful ruler had risen, and beside her stood the human who changed the fate of a galaxy.